Hi, welcome to Senior Solutions. I'm your host, Karen Halloran. Thanks for tuning in today. Today we have Stephen Spano and Andrea Witt. They're from Spano, Dawicki, and Witt, which is located in Saugus. Welcome to the show. Good to see you, Andrea and Stephen.
Great to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, well, we may as well just jump right in and find out your background.
Sure. So I graduated from Boston College, undergraduate, and then I went to Suffolk Law School in Boston. I've been an attorney since 2001, really focused the whole time on elder law and estate planning.
Wow. And Stephen?
I grew up in East Boston, went to UMass in Boston, then Northeastern University, where I have an MBA from, and then law school at New England Law. And we've had the firm now for 31 years.
Wow, that's a long time. You've helped a lot of people.
Well, we like to think so. At least our Google reviews are good anyway. They're
awesome. Really
nice, in a time where people focus on just results. Our clients really focus on how nicely we treated them in addition to the results. And it's really nice to see people appreciate the care that our staff provide.
Absolutely. Well, in retirement planning, a lot of times people will opt for income for life. I've heard it said that before. Are there dangers to income for life? Do you want to answer that, Andrea?
Sure. There certainly are. I think you hear from lawyers often, it depends. And there can be times that income for life can be a good solution under certain circumstances, but I think for so many of our clients, they seem to find themselves being given advice that this is their only option, and that can be unfortunate in a lot of cases.
Well, people sometimes take retirement early. It can be catastrophic. How can someone know if it's right for them to retire early?
Well, we recommend people never retire, actually, because the question is, what's your next phase of life? And we recommend that because we see so many people who do retire. We do pre-retirement counseling. And those people who retire, it's fine for 6 to 9 months, but then they're wondering what to do.
Right.
And we then suggest, go out and look for a part-time job. What have you always wanted to do in your life? Why don't you try that? And the problem is, if they've already started taking Social Security, they're locked in. Now there's a short period of time where they can go back and change that. They're locked into that lower payment. And for every year you delay from 62 through 70, you get an 8% increase.
Wow.
And what's really great about stretching it out to 70, if you can, is remember each year there's a cost of living increase. So let's say there's a cost of living increase of 5%. Would you rather have that 5% on that really low amount, which is approximately at least 50% lower, or would you rather have 5% on that increased dollar amount that you waited to? Because that cost of living increase does not keep pace with inflation. If you talk to anybody who retired 7 or 8 years ago, they'll say, oh, I thought my pension and Social Security were great, but now the costs have gone up so high and they're expected to go up even higher. How are you going to actually cover those costs? So delaying can be beneficial, and if you're working part-time, depending on the income, that can actually increase the amount of your base Social Security, not to mention that extra 8% you'd get per year.
Correct, yeah.
That's his MBA talking.
Yeah, I can see that. You're pretty well educated. Well, another question is sometimes many spouses are afraid if their spouse goes into the nursing home, they're going to lose the house. Is that a legitimate concern for them?
There is so much fear around nursing homes, choosing the right nursing home, how to pay for a nursing home, what assets they can keep, how do you protect assets. I think that's probably the phrase that we hear most from clients, or when potential clients call and they say, we want to protect our assets. And that it means different things to different people, right?
Wow.
So in terms of when two spouses are home and one needs nursing home care and they're worried, will the other spouse lose the house? More than 9 times out of 10, this is not a legitimate fear. The house can be entirely protected for almost all of our clients.
That's
so
great.
I'm not sure I would consider that a legitimate fear.
That's great. I know a lot of people do have that fear, though.
Right, and it drives them to creating and transferring their house into either their children's names, who might get a divorce, might be in a car accident, or have some other problem, or they place it into what's called an irrevocable or unrevocable trust. And they still don't own it anymore. If they then want to downsize, move to assisted living or somewhere else, they don't have the funds to do that, and their children may not be able to transfer that house back, or the children may be going through a divorce, their kids might be in college, there's the financial aid application that gets filled out, it might count as an asset. There are so many potential problems. And as I often tell people, what's good for the lawyer is often bad for you, and that means the lawyer actually setting up the trust is making some money, and you might want to think about, is this advice not biased in some way? And secondly, to undo an irrevocable trust is not as easy as it sounds. The lawyers setting these trusts up tell people, oh, don't worry, your kids will agree. Well, the kids don't always agree, and we see that.
Yeah.
And it can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to undo a trust when a child does not agree.
It reminds me a little, you know, when we do estate planning and families come to us, and you always hear, oh, my kids won't fight over that. I know there won't be a problem with this. I know there won't be a problem with that. Or we gave the house because I know if I need it, they'll give it back.
Right.
And the number of times that we then call the children or whoever it might be and say, well, Mom would really like the house back. And
No.
So it happens more often than not,
Yeah.
that the person will say, I'm not in a position to give it back. I don't want to give it back. I mean, it could be a million different reasons.
Right.
But and now Mom and Dad feel taken advantage of, and it's just bad all around.
And they aren't necessarily bad children. We don't want to create that impression. But, you know, we had one son who sat in our conference room and cried, because when Mom transferred the house to him, and he was an only child, through her trust, what happened is him and his wife stopped saving for their two children for college. And when she wanted it transferred out of the trust back to her, he said, but Mom, you don't understand. We haven't saved for college. If we transfer the house back to you, our kids won't have the college money. And he was in tears, but he couldn't do it. And so it wasn't that he was bad, it was just that 10 or 15 years ago, he and his wife modified their behavior based on the fact that they were going to inherit this house. Right. And now their entire plans for the future were thrown into disarray. And I can understand the pain and the suffering that son was experiencing as well.
Sure. Well, I was going to ask about the parents transferring the home to the kids, but I think we've answered that, whether it's a good strategy. Now, what about the importance of having a will? Not having one, it causes hardship, I think, for the families. And what do you think?
It certainly can. You know, I think after asset protection, the next thing we hear is, I need a will or I need a trust. So we'll sit down with estate planning clients and talk about estate planning in general. Does not having a will cause a problem? Yes, it certainly can. But there are other documents as well that we feel are probably even more important in ensuring that you keep your own control over your own decisions and your own independence as you get older. So yes, the will is certainly important, but don't misunderstand the importance of healthcare documents and financial documents as well.
Absolutely.
You know, I want to go back to the will, because many times people want to leave an inequitable distribution. Let's say they have 5 children, and they may have given one child a substantial amount of money over their lives. And now what they want to do is adjust for that in their will. Well, if they don't have a will, that the court assumes there is a will that divides everything equally. And so that child now receives the equal amount of everybody else. In addition, unfortunately, we discover many times that there are children that were born out of wedlock. And people don't realize that those are heirs at law. That's the technical definition. And they inherit even though someone may not want them to inherit. Or someone may want to leave a small sum to charity, or even a larger sum. Well, that's not going there. It's just going to the heirs at law. And Andrea mentioned the term estate planning. And many people say, I don't need estate planning. I just need a will.
Right.
But a will is part of the term estate planning, as is a healthcare proxy, a HIPAA authorization, a durable power of attorney. And as I tell people all the time, we say, you are the estate. Estate planning is for you, and it's for those you love, and you want to make sure that when you're gone, or even if you're disabled, that someone can make decisions for you, and those decisions are in accordance with your wishes, your hopes, your dreams, and your desires.
Now, you're talking about healthcare proxies. Sometimes the doctor will say we can do one for free. Now, is that the same as a healthcare proxy that is done in your office?
No, it is of all the, people talk a lot as well about Googling documents. Are there free documents we can get online? Is there a less expensive alternative or a more convenient alternative because they just don't want to go to a lawyer for whatever reason? Massachusetts does have a standard free healthcare proxy that any doctor's office or hospital, if you've ever been to the hospital for any procedure, they've probably asked you, do you have a healthcare proxy? Do you want to sign one here? It will avoid a guardianship in the future if it's validly executed. So if you do name somebody on that free healthcare proxy, and you find yourself in a situation where you can't make decisions for yourself, you have named somebody, so that document does work. It's not ideal. It's a very, very basic document. It allows you to name somebody, but really it doesn't give them any instructions or understanding of what your wishes would be. What kind of treatment do you want? Right. What kind of end-of-life care do you want? What's important to you? What treatment don't you want? You can't really customize that document. So is it ideal? No. But of all the free or do-it-yourself documents out there, I think this is the one that we feel works in a pinch.
Right.
It does, but we also see that it causes problems because oftentimes the person that's taken the person to the doctor is not the person that you would name as your healthcare agent, but they always feel pressure to name that person who's with them at that very moment. Secondarily, many people would say, no, I don't want to move far away. We had a case where a woman's son took her to El Dorado, Arkansas. I had to look it up on the map. I confess I didn't know where it was. And she didn't really want to go there. She had wanted to stay here, and she told all of her friends that. But she named her son where she could have named anybody else, and so he moved her to El Dorado, Arkansas, not because he hated her, because he loved her, and he wanted to be able to take care of her and see her right there. And all of her friends couldn't visit her anymore, and she did not survive long afterwards. I remember her friends saying that she talked to them on the phone and she couldn't understand what people were saying, because my guess is they had an accent. I've never actually heard somebody from El Dorado, Arkansas, so I don't know. But that's another example of thinking about those kinds of things when you draft it. And as Andrea said, you might want to think about even additional things. For example, I've been a vegan and an occasional vegetarian, but mostly a vegan all my life since I've been 11 years old. And I put in my healthcare proxy, I don't want meat, I don't like dairy products, and please don't feed me these things. And this is the kind of setting I would like to live in. I would like to have my funds spent to take care of me and my wife, where we're more independent, so to speak, than we are now. Why wouldn't you put those things in a healthcare proxy? Because it is a living document.
Mm-hmm. I think, another thing that's important, really important with the healthcare proxy is to talk to the person that you've named. Too often we find people fill out this form and they don't let the person know that they've named them.
Right.
And you always have the option, if you've been named as a healthcare agent, to resign, to decline to act, to say, I don't feel comfortable in this position. And that can happen a lot, because it is quite I don't know if burden is the right word, but it's a lot to take. It's a huge responsibility to take on somebody else's healthcare if they can't speak for themselves.
Right.
So it is important to communicate with whom you've named and make sure they're comfortable with that and that they really know what you would want under the circumstances.
Yeah, that's good information.
And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but Andrea talked about the fact that the people that you appoint, that you nominate, those people feel a great deal of obligation and stress and anxiety. So why wouldn't you put all your wishes in there? You presumably love these people and they love you. So why would you want to create stress by not giving them some direction and cause them to feel tremendous guilt? By putting your wishes in the document, they will then understand that they are your mouthpiece and they're carrying out your wishes, and will make life easier for them as well.
Good advice. Very good advice. Well, we're talking about probate. How important is the goal of avoiding probate? Should it be a goal for everybody to just avoid that altogether?
You know,
I always want to say it depends. But,
it does depend,
for
because
the vast majority of people, avoiding probate is a good goal. So the process of probate is basically what happens when somebody dies, the process of administering their will, of taking the will to the court along with a whole bunch of other documents and having somebody named as the personal representative. Just because you're written in the will itself, the court has to actually make that appointment official in order for you to act as the personal representative. You might remember the term executor.
Right.
So that changed in the last decade or so. But that process of probate, by law, takes at least a year from the date of death. So that's a long time to be dealing with lawyers, dealing with the courts, dealing with creditors, at least a year from the date of death. And mostly, it can go on. I think we have a case in our office right now that's about 11 years old. For various reasons. It can go on seemingly forever. And nobody wants to do that.
Right. There's litigation involved in that case. And litigation just stretches everything out. Now, there are cases where someone might have a very small estate, under $25,000, and a car of any value. And in that case, there's a special simplified form of probate called voluntary administration that people can go through that doesn't involve all of the stress and length of period of time that the rest of probate goes through.
That's great. That is great.
But the other thing for people to realize is that probate is very public. Today, you can go on to a website called masscourts.org, and what you can do is you can look at anybody's probate file. You can see a PDF of what the will says, where all the relatives are, who they are, where they live, all sorts of interesting or sort of
money.
And the money, by the way. And so nosy people can really snoop around.
Never knew that.
People don't realize that. We actually sometimes have a seminar where we'll just ask somebody in the audience, do you know somebody who died in your neighborhood? Let's look them up. and they're appalled that you can do this, because hearing about it is one thing, but seeing all the details of your neighbor's death online is very stressful for people. And by creating and properly funding a trust, you can avoid that. But creating a trust alone does not avoid probate, although most people think it does.
Okay, I did not know that. Someone had asked me recently that someone at the bank had said to avoid probate, add a joint owner to the bank account. Is that a good idea? No, Stephen's saying no.
So that it's amazing how dangerous joint bank accounts are.
Really?
Yes.
Spouses have joint bank accounts often, and typically that isn't a problem. What can cause a problem if you have 3 children and put one child on the account. Now remember, as a joint owner, when one owner dies, the joint owner now owns that account themselves. That is not something that's going to go according to your will.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if you have, your account with $100,000 on it, and your presumption is, well, my son will divide the money equally amongst his 4 siblings, he has no legal obligation to do so as the joint owner. That is his account.
Wow.
So, or if son gets divorced, for example, that is an account that has to be listed on a financial statement for a divorce. He's the owner of the account. So I think people really don't, I think the people at the bank don't quite understand the implications, and family members often don't quite understand the implications of those joint accounts.
So probably best to not do it then.
We don't recommend it. We have a case where once at a presentation up in Gloucester, and the person came up to us afterwards and said, you know, I remember you cautioned us against joint bank accounts a couple of years ago. And let me tell you my story. And she said, I disregarded you and I put my brother on my joint bank account. She was in her 80s. Her brother was in his late 70s. And all of a sudden, all of the money disappeared from the account. Oh. And she called her brother, and he said, there's no way, I swear to God, I didn't touch this. So they went down to the bank, and what had happened is in the 1980s, he had a company, and it went under, and he failed to pay payroll taxes, which are the taxes that an employer deducts on behalf of its employees and then pays to the government. But he failed to pay them. So the IRS had a lien on him. And that lien was over $1.7 million. Whoa. And so what happened, as soon as they saw his name on a bank account, they went in and took all of her money. Oh. And she spent the last, I think she said, 2.5 years with lawyers trying to get the money back and was unable to do it. Wow. And so there's a case, and the poor man was horrified because he thought this thing just disappeared, this debt, and he didn't realize it stayed with him. Wow. So you really have to be careful with these accounts.
Yeah. You do have to be careful. Now, there's a lot of times you get in the mail these mailings from advisors, and they have a free seminar, free dinner. You know, is that a good way to find a reputable person and work with?
I'll let Stephen take this one.
Well, since I'm a senior myself, I get those. So, and I just laugh at them, and sometimes I actually go to them. And for the most part, those people are trying to sell you that income for life product, which is called an annuity. And sometimes they have an attorney there, and frequently it's not a well-known attorney, because that attorney oftentimes, and I'm not picking on all financial advisors, by the way, and I'm not picking on all attorneys, but that attorney's just a shill. They're a stand-in for the person to give them some credibility. And they have very little expertise themselves. They're not specialized in this practice. They're not board-certified elder law attorneys. And so what they'll do is they'll just say, yes, this is a great idea, and the person buys this financial product, which often causes them a problem in the future, especially if they need the money at some point, or they're married and the person who the annuity was done for actually ends up in the nursing home. So there are all sorts of problems for them. The best way to find a financial advisor is to investigate, to talk to people. You can look at broker check to look at people who are federally licensed. You can also look at the state website. There's the National Association for Insurance Commissioners, I think it's called as well. Look to see whether people have been indicted for any problems. It doesn't hurt to Google them to see whether they've been in the news. One financial advisor from the western suburbs, who many of our clients went to, got thrown out of a pizza shop, and police came because he was throwing pizzas at people, having a tantrum fit because he was drunk. And I tell people, is that the person you want managing your money? And the other thing is to look at what licenses this person has. Because if they only have an insurance license, that means they can only sell you insurance products. There's no law in Massachusetts that prohibits them from being called a financial advisor, even though they're really just an insurance agent and can only sell you insurance products. And people think an annuity is an investment. It's really an insurance product. And people will say, but it's secured. It's only secured by the strength of the company issuing it. There's no federal or state guarantee insurance that supports these companies. Again, there are cases where annuities can be beneficial for people, but most of these types of people selling them are not doing what's in the person's best interest.
Good information. Now, when somebody is looking for a board-certified elder law attorney, where should they look to find one?
So we're both board certified elder law attorneys. What does that mean? Basically, we take another bar exam that really specializes in elder law, in estate planning, in disability law, and this is absolutely what we are experts in. You don't want to go to your general practitioner. We often liken law to medicine, right? So if you have a broken leg, you're not going to go to your ophthalmologist.
Right.
Or if you have a heart condition, you don't want to go to your podiatrist. You want to go to somebody that really specializes in what you need help with.
Sure.
And law is exactly the same way. So if you need estate planning done, you want to go to an expert estate planner. You don't want to go to the attorney that helped you with your divorce or helped with a slip and fall or whatever it might be. And we are not general practitioners, right? If you need help with a divorce or help with your slip and fall, your personal injury, criminal law, we don't do any of that. We will refer you to somebody that we know that's an expert in that area. But as board certified elder law attorneys, that is our area. And where can you find it? So the National Elder Law Foundation certifies attorneys. So NELF, NELF.org would be the site to check out.
Oh, okay, terrific.
Yeah.
And we're not the only two in Massachusetts. There are 29.
Oh, not that many though.
No, there are not that many in Massachusetts.
Wow.
It is a very stringent process besides the bar exam, and you have to document your experience in these matters. You have to be peer approved, and you have to get recertified every 5 years, and there's mandatory continuing education. And unfortunately, Massachusetts is one of those states that has no mandatory continuing education for attorneys. I think literally hairdressers have mandatory continuing education, yet attorneys in Massachusetts do not. It's a surprise to most people.
It is crazy
That
to
is
think about.
crazy. Well, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you to do some estate planning or have some questions, how would they get in touch with you? We'll flash it at the end, but if you want to just tell the audience how
Sure.
to get in touch with you.
So they can look at our website, SpanoDawickiWitt.com, or give us a call at 781-231-7800, and we'd be happy to talk to them.
They can also text our main number, which is the 781-231-7800, or if they want to email, they can email help@SpanoDawickiWitt.com.
Sounds great.
It's
Sounds
a mouthful.
Great. It really
You know?
is. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I know I learned a lot, so I'm sure everybody at home did. So thank you so much.
It's been a
Karen.
Great
pleasure.
to see you.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. And thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, have a great day.